Adventure Time is one of my favorite animated series of all time, with some of my favorite animated characters. It's a show that embodies nostalgia because I didn't even watch it when it was coming out, but I feel nostalgic for the time that I was watching it. It's genuinely a show that feels so calming and enjoyable that you can't not have a smile on your face, and the finale really is the cherry on top to make me realize how special it is. Distant Lands, the sort of mini-series epilogue that came out in 2020, was yet another treat for this fanbase that managed to be just as heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. So, of course, I just had to be there to see the newest edition, Fionna and Cake, right? Well, it's complicated. I hate to say it, but I've always seen the Fionna and Cake episodes of Adventure Time as overrated, and in some cases, they're some of my least favorite episodes in the whole show. Romantically pairing Fionna with characters who the show points out are too old for Finn is a really strange and uncomfortable thing to do, and it's practically all you get out of 3 of the 4 episodes. Then the last episode is just boring, and it seems like everyone can agree on that. I've never really been sure why these episodes are loved by fans, and my distaste for them obviously tanked my interest in this latest show. But luckily, things turned around. Fionna and Cake is honestly a bit of a reboot to the Ice King fanfiction stories from Adventure Time, as it takes place in a sort of alternate universe where Fionna is a normal girl, and Cake is a normal cat that doesn't talk. It's a lot like Farm World. Plus, you can also tempt me by putting in my favorite characters from that show I like, and Simon/Ice King is a main part of this story. Despite how much I'm not interested in the Fionna and Cake episodes, the Fionna and Cake show seems completely different, so I gave it a chance. And I'm happy to say that I do quite like these first 2 stories. The show splits the story between the 2 universes, being Fionna and Cake and Adventure Time, so I'm going to do the same here, starting by just talking about the first episode called Fionna Campbell. This will be spoilers though, so if you haven't watched the show, you should. It's only 2 episodes, it'll take you less than an hour. Let's go. So like I said, Fionna and Cake and all the other characters are essentially reboots of the originals. Fionna in Adventure Time was basically just a female Finn. She was a super powerful, cool girl who could take down big monsters, as usual. But in this show, that's just in the dream sequences. Fionna in the real world is kind of a failure of a person. She gets fired from her job, she forgets Cake's vet appointment, she sorta can't do anything. This is a weird comparison, but her character here is practically lifted out of a 90s teen comedy movie, which means all of the decisions she makes are the wrong ones, and that is fun to watch. Fionna is a much different character to Finn, but it seems like the whole point of her story is that she has a bit of Finn's hero personality inside her, but she hasn't harnessed it yet. Immediately, I think they did well with her, and I also like Madeline Martin's voice for her. The other title character is Cake, who's basically been downgraded to regular cat, and I'll be honest, she's got nothing going on yet. I don't even feel like I need to talk about her, because there's very little to say. For now, she's a plot device to bring the 2 worlds together, but I trust that the writers have more in store for her later on. But another character I'm happy to say I enjoyed was Marshall Lee. Surprisingly, despite Neil Patrick Harris not returning to play Prince Gumball like in the original series, Donald Glover did come back. And Donald Glover's kind of a weird guy, because he's Troy from Community, but he's also Lando Calrissian, but he's also Childish Gambino, an R&B rap artist with multiple charting singles, and on top of that, he's strangely good at playing male Marceline. Marceline is my favorite character from the original series, so as her #1 fan, I can guarantee that he's got her mannerisms down, and so does the animation. Marshall Lee is a funny, charismatic guy, and I'm happy about that, because it's very hard to make me not like Marceline, so I would be pretty frustrated if her counterpart wasn't any good. Moving on though, the funny thing about the plot of this episode is that it barely exists. From Fiona's perspective, this is just a normal day, because it's Simon the whole time who actually has stuff going on in the other episode, which makes this episode not quite as interesting. It does have a lot of those, ooh, look, it's that character moments, like BMO being an alarm clock, and those are fun, but the simple plot hasn't really gotten going yet here. This is mostly just an intro to these characters, so I guess that's fair enough, but I hope the plot does develop quickly in the 3rd episode, which I figure will surround the Fionna and Cake world again, because at the point we're at, Fionna herself actually still doesn't have much going on. Her cat is the one who got sucked through the portal, not her, so she better get something to do soon. Speaking of intros, the intro to this episode is much different to Adventure Time, which I'm actually happy with. I quite like it. It's a much more poppy, upbeat, vibrant intro compared to the relaxed and simple intro the original show had, but it feels very fitting. One thing I did notice is that the intro says Fionna Campbell, not Fionna and Cake, which does make me think we're going to get a different intro for every episode, and I actually like that too. While this is a fun and cute intro with that hint of dissatisfaction, I'm guessing we're not going to be sticking with this vibe the whole series, so switching it up would make sense. And skipping all the way to the end, the way the episode leaves you is pretty smart, because while the story feels incomplete, that's a strength the show is playing into. This whole episode is just a starting point to build off of, and it's very much one where you have to keep watching. Random portal opens up, how did that happen? Guess I gotta watch the next one, it works every time. So I'm pretty happy with this first episode. It's not everything I ever wanted, but it is a good start, and it quickly converted me from a hater of the Fionna and Cake characters to a fan, because these are much better versions. I'll always be a die-hard Adventure Time fan, so it's going to be kind of impossible to get me to be more hyped for these types of episodes over ones like episode 2, but they did a good job. I'd say this episode is about a 7.5 out of 10, but whatever, the score doesn't matter, let's keep going. Episode 2 is called Simon Petrikov, and this is the one that really got to me. After Cake slips into the Adventure Time universe at the end of episode 1, we watched the other side of the episode happening at the same time from Simon, or the Ice King's perspective. But first we start with a flashback to the Simon and Marcy times, which seems like a tough place to write due to the reputation these two have. Two of the best episodes to ever come out of Adventure Time surround this relationship, so whatever you make has got to be special, and this scene really is. You get more of the same sweet dialogue that shows how caring Simon was, but it also brings up the main theme of this episode, which is purposefully similar to the previous one. When Simon was Ice King, nobody liked him because he was an old, mean, needy asshole who couldn't take care of himself, at least from the outside perspective. And now that he's finally back to being Simon, everyone seems bored of him, and he has so little power as just a normal person. Also, they want him to write more fanfiction. Again, it's a character who can't find their place in the world. They really just keep making his story more depressing. So now we find Simon, I believe a couple years after Obsidian, trying to repair his life in several different ways, and trying to bring back Betty just like she tried to bring him back. I'll be honest, this episode is kind of just 25 minutes of walking around crying, and while the emotion is incredibly well done, there's not much levity to Simon's character, so I'm happy they brought in others like Finn. The idea with Finn, as well as Marceline and PB later on, is that unlike Simon, they've all found their place in the world. And I guess Finn's a man of the jungle, because he really has become this tall and muscly badass that can take down a bear about 10 times bigger than him. And yet he's still the one saying Adventure Time lingo like suck these nuts, he's perfect. The entire sequence with Finn and Simon in the heart of Ooh is really sweet, because as Finn says, he loves fixing people. The main thing with Finn in this episode is that while he's not able to connect to Simon because of their differences as people, he's actually the nicest guy, and it shows. It's also worth mentioning that it's practically canon that Jake has died at this point, which is very sad and not something I love about the canon, but I very much appreciate that this episode destroys the idea that Finn spent the remainder of his life after Jake's death just being sad. He's so lively and fun in this episode, and he still loves helping people, which is just the best way they could have done it. I'll also quickly cover Marceline and PB, who don't show up until very late in the episode. They have one scene. It honestly doesn't have much emotional impact, but it's really funny, and I'm happy to see that they've just gone back to the goofy married couple shenanigans that were in the Obsidian intro. I do hope to see them back again, though, because Marceline especially is essential to Simon's arc here. With Finn not being able to help him and Marceline too busy to talk, I guess, we get a montage of Simon walking around Ooh with the background song Part of the Madness. And I gotta say, they're killing it on the songs. This one is amazing. The feeling of being so exhausted with being sad is one of the hardest feelings to have, and this scene and the song behind it represent that feeling perfectly. But then the episode decides to remind you that this show is fun, and we randomly get Hell Chuscoos. Apparently this was teased at the end of one of the Distant Lands episodes, but I never saw that bit, so this totally caught me off guard, and I thought it was hilarious. He keeps annoying Simon and being genuinely kind of brutal about his obsession with Betty, so Simon decides to finally try to save her by strapping up cords to Chuscoos and fucking killing him. I'm sad we don't get any more of Evil Chuscoos, which is actually his real name in the subtitles, but the fact that Chuscoos is now canonically dead is the funniest thing ever, so it's fine. Of course, though, the experiment doesn't work, so instead of bringing back Betty, it opens up a portal in Fionna and Cake's universe. Cake jumps through it, and there you go. Episode's connected, we're done here. So the Depressed Simon episode is extremely sad, but a part of me couldn't stop smiling. After all this time, these characters that I love are brought back, and they just nailed every single one of them. I especially love the Finn segment, but the entire plot with Simon is beautiful and a great continuation to his character. I really can't wait to see him again, and God, I can't wait to see him happy, this poor guy. I gave a score for the last episode, so I guess I'll score this too, and it's getting a 9 out of 10. Absolute banger. This new series is pretty good, and I always should have trusted that it would be. Sure, anything can let you down, but at this point, it's Adventure Time. It's probably great. A new thing about this show is the more adult aspects. When it comes to the swearing, I think it's a bit much, but I'm not seething at the screen that Marceline said pissed. I don't think it was needed, but I don't mind either. When it comes to the blood, though, it's kinda great. Honestly, it's a small touch, but it makes the fight with whatever crazy creature that was all the better, and it also does make Finn's back look cool. Basically, I think the adult aspects are pretty solid, but I'd prefer they stayed at the level they are at right now instead of going any further. I don't need to hear Cake the dog say fuck. My final thoughts are that it's a good start, and I've gone from thinking I might skip this show to being so damn invested. I doubt it's going to be my favorite Adventure Time thing, but it doesn't need to be. It's definitely different, but in a way I think fans will enjoy, so I would recommend keeping up with Fionna and Cake. That's about it for me, and what I'll leave you with is this. If Max makes me start watching these episodes with CNN notifications, I will break my TV.